Welcome everyone to How to Father, a podcast on the amateurness of being a dad. I'm your host, Troy Rivas. Thank you guys. This is episode 6. We've had a lot of success lately. I'm super excited for what we have had in the past and what we have coming up in the future, especially today's episode. I want to give a great shout out thanks to Shay808, my good friend Shay. He's the one who does all the music here. Great job. He's an award-winning Billboard charting music engineer, works out there in LA. So Shay, thank you so very much for supporting and providing the beats for all the episodes here, the intro and the outros. Couple local businesses here. UN17 is a speakeasy plus a nonprofit here in New Mexico. We have the Press Club, is another private member club here that has been supporting the podcast. I talked about Above Snakes, that is a local men's boutique shop, which they do have a women's side coming up soon here in Old Town. Thank you guys, Above Snakes, for supporting us all the time. Navigation Realty Group, my real estate group here. And a great little fun spot, which is kind of how my guests and I met, was volleyball. But we play at this place called Duke City Beaches, and they've been supporting us, even allowed us to put a little banner there. So we are on episode 6. This has been a great journey. We're very excited. We've actually have listeners now in Nigeria, Costa Rica, and Germany, and of course in the United States. So I guess we're in a sense worldwide. But enough of that, enough of the podcast and the names and this and that. I want to welcome and I'm so excited to have you here. We've had many wonderful conversations. Dr. Natasha, am I saying this right, Najar?
Yes.
Dr. Natasha Najar, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Oh my gosh.
I feel very privileged to be here.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, what you do, etc., where you're from, why you don't like the Chicago Bears, anything else like that.
Oh, man. How I lost my Chicago card?
Yes, how you lost your Chicago card.
So I'm originally from Chicago. I got my undergrad at DePaul University. After that, I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I got my PhD in clinical psychology.
Okay.
And that is where I became a Green Bay fan and lost my Chicago card. Then I did an internship in Tucson, Arizona for a year that turned into about 3 years of staying in that area at the VA. And my postdoc was here in Albuquerque, New Mexico about 4 years ago. I had a 2-year postdoc. And so that brought me here. And, I think this city has lived up to its reputation of the city of the entrapment?
So New Mexico, is a very beautiful state. Our state motto is the land of enchantment.
It is.
And everyone goes to the land of entrapment is kind of where it kind of ends up. But
I never really anticipated I was going to stay here that long. But after my postdoc, I decided to go into private practice. And so here I am making a home out of Albuquerque, which has been delightful.
And we are very happy to have you here. So you said you're from Chicago and everything like that. Tell me about Chicago and life in Chicago. And I'm going to preface this because...
I was going to say, please, because that's a loaded question.
Yes. But before we dive into this, I know you had a little reservations. And of course, you hear things that you think you might hear instead of the actuality of what it is. And it's like, why do you have a female on a podcast about fatherhood and dads? And I think, we all need to learn maybe some tenderness or whatnot. But I think with your background as a psychologist and all that fun stuff will give us a lot of guided light. And we're not here to, we'll touch on this more, to, in a sense, womansplain.
Right.
Being a dad and all that fun stuff. But you were a daughter to a father. So about that experience and then kind of how you see things moving forward. So that's what the podcast is going to be on. So don't run away saying, oh, here comes another woman telling us how to do. It's funny when the best sex tips for men is on Cosmo magazine. And that's probably because women know what they want type of thing. And so there's different things like that make sense. And I think in this case, it does make sense. So, but tell us about your upbringing in Chicago and are you a Polish dog girl? Are you like a beef sandwich? Like, tell us.
All the above.
Okay.
Yeah, Chicago food. I miss, that's probably the one thing I miss the most, which is probably why I go home so frequently. A Polish hot dog or Polish dogs the most. and Maxwell style Polishes specifically. So caramelized onion, mustard. That's the way to go.
So I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Again, this is my kiddos. Your kids they follow suit on what you know, and I tell them all the time when it comes to hot dogs, when it comes to hamburgers, ketchup doesn't belong in it. I like ketchup. I like ketchup on fries and ketchup with tater tots and stuff like that. But when it comes to a good dog and a good hamburger, you don't put ketchup on it.
So I'm laughing a lot because this is probably the first place where I should have lost my Chicago card. A traditional Chicago dog definitely does not have ketchup. In fact, you have a lot of really old school hot dog stands that specifically will tell you we don't do ketchup on our hot dogs here. But I always have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Ketchup and relish were my thing.
That's why you became a Packers fan. Relish is good, though. I like relish.
That's where I became a Packers fan. Yes, absolutely.
So you grew up in Chicago. Are your parents originally from Chicago?
My mother and her whole family are originally from Chicago. And actually, my mom was born in Mexico.
Okay.
But she immigrated here when she was 5. And so my grandfather was already living here at that time and worked here. So that's where my family came. My dad's actually originally from Pueblo, Colorado.
Oh, wow. That's not far from here.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've talked about this. I just realized I have a lot of family in Pueblo, which...
That's right. I forgot about that.
Probably some, we got to look back. I guarantee we're distant cousins or something.
That would be really neat. Yes. That would make a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, in kind of way, yes.
Both of my parents, they were both protesters. So they were very largely politically involved and such. And they were really heavily involved in the Chicano movement at the time.
Nice.
And so they met twice. I think the first time was in Boulder, Colorado, and then the second time was in D.C.
Oh, nice. Wow.
And then from there, it was just kind of history. They had a short, long-distance relationship, and then my dad decided to move up to Chicago. Okay. He had ambitions of going to Colorado and maybe starting this one program at Stanford or something, and decided instead to go to Chicago and be with this lady who he's been writing letters to and phone calls. The rest is history.
You think about the days of writing letters and phone calls and stuff like that, and it's easy now as you send a text, and most of the texts are okay, they're vague or they're this, and then
and this was long distance phone calls. My grandfather used to joke at him, and there was more profanity in this, but it was you guys are such idiots. For as much as money that you're spending on these long distance phone calls, you could be spending on flights.
That's true.
Back and forth, because
when they collect, they made a lot of money.
They really did. Right, things that we take for granted now.
I mean, you think about a lot of things like 1-800-COLLECT. What was it called, the box where you paid to watch a music video?
I remember them.
Remember those?
Yes.
You pay whatever it was, and you and there was really no method to it. I don't even know if I'm gonna get my video shown, but I paid for it, and I'm just continue to watch this until the video. And now we can just go on YouTube, and watch anything we want. We go on TikTok or whatever the case is. So your parents wrote love letters back and forth and all that fun stuff, and they ended up in Chicago. And are you an only child? I know you have a brother.
No, I have one brother. Yes.
Okay. Are you the eldest?
I am the oldest. Okay. And then it's just he and I. And we're super close.
That's great.
He's my bestest friend. I love and adore him to Mises Pieces. Oh. Yeah. That's probably, I think, yes, being away from my parents is super hard, but probably being away from my brother is the hardest.
I get that. That makes sense. So tell us about your relationship with your dad.
My relationship with my dad. Okay, well, it's probably fair to start off and say I'm a complete and total daddy's girl.
Okay.
Anybody that knows me knows that fact. We have a really, really good relationship. And I'm probably the closest to him, but I had to work really, really hard on getting our relationship to where it is today.
Okay.
My dad he's very old school, right? And so I think he definitely comes from this generation of you're more stereotypical, authoritative sort of dad, right? Do as I say, do it just because I said it.
Yeah.
Right. Don't answer me back. But he's also really, really, kind and wonderful and very generous. Definitely, I think, holds his identity as a provider and helper and just doing everything for his family. Doing stuff for us was his role, and it still continues to be.
Okay.
right? Like he was just here a couple of weeks ago as I was moving. And, my dad's almost 70 and he's got, physical ailments and such. And he's still like, how can I pack this? And do you need me to move this here? And I'm like, Dad, it's okay. I got it. No. What can I do? Right. So he definitely finds a lot of like usefulness and helping and being there for me and providing help in every single possible way. And so, yeah, we have a really special relationship. I mean, it's been tough. It's complex, right? Mm-hmm. Like every relationship.
Exactly.
He's also your very kind of like stoic silent type in some ways. And I'm super talkative. So that's required me like really pushing him kind of outside of his comfort zone.
Okay.
For better or for worse. And it's worked out well for us.
It's funny because I was talking to a dad, golly, this was years ago, and his daughter, young, she just blah, 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 blah. And he said, I was a talkative person until I had her. I couldn't get a word in. And I'm not saying that's your dad. But
well, you know what, though? It's possible because my mother talks even more than I do. And, I think between the both of us.
You guys just shuttle down.
Yeah, he has no voice. Poor guy.
He's just like, I pick my battles and I'm just going to sit back here and smile and love my girls. But that's awesome. That's awesome. So with that dynamic of your dad, clearly you guys are close. Like you said, he flew down here.
Both of my parents.
Both of your parents flew down here to help you move and all that fun stuff.
They were actually just here to vacation, but because it was so close to my move, he definitely tried to make that part of the trip, and I tried to resist that as much as possible.
It's something. I don't have daughters, and of course I love my boys to death, and we'll be there for them in every which way, shape, or form. But it's special when you see a dad like drop everything for their girls. Like it's something that we talked of the last episode with, or 2 episodes ago with Sty. He has 2 little girls, and you can see like him talking about his son. He's so proud and excited. Then when he brings up his baby girls, he lit up, and I'm just sitting there watching him like, man, I know it's not the 110-degree sun that's beating through this window. It's like he was so excited about his little girls. And
I definitely can see that. My dad does a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think raising a girl is probably a little bit different. And also really hard, I would imagine, as a dad.
I think so. I've always said if I had a girl, I'm going to raise her to be the biggest brat in the world. So she can be picky and have these like standards. But it's more than me making her like have these standards. Just me showing her how to be treated as a man, as to a woman.
Absolutely.
And do you feel like that representation your dad had molded you to who you are today? And you're like, you know what? I have standards because my pops is here. Like my pops is 1-800-COLLECT, like frequent flyer back in the day.
I was thinking about that a lot, and I don't think I realized how much he has influenced my standards and such. And he definitely did. He very much like caters to my mom, and is very like accommodating in a positive way, but in a way that I always just kind of saw as normal. Right? Yeah. Somebody who goes above and beyond their way with like gestures and gifts and just normal thoughtfulness, right? And so, of course, as you're dating and navigating and realize like, no, not everybody does that. That's weird.
Well, that's a good point for most men out there, is for them to realize that when you're raising girls, when you're raising daughters, you're not just raising them to be the best pianist in 4th grade or this and that. You're raising them you're showing them how they should be treated and how they should be respected, and how your relationship with their mom is, even if you're in a relationship or not, it's a big part of that. So as you saw your dad, probably not just like, oh, your mom's like, oh, I need this. He's like, okay, I'll get it. He's like, no, I want to give this to you out of the kindness of my heart, etc. Yeah. You like, oh, I think I deserve that too. And
they both did, right? I mean, and all credit to my mom. She was she's still very loving and giving throughout too. So I think that also taught me a lot on like how to treat your like significant other. And yeah, I mean, my father, I remember like one thing that always sticks out to my memory is my dad and I were walking down the street one day, and he moves me right to like his left side. And I was like, why do you always do that? And he was like, whenever you this must have been before I started dating. He was like, whenever you start dating and get serious about the guy, if he does not move you into like the inner
Then he's
side,
not the one.
exactly.
He's not the one.
And I was like, why? And when he explained everything about like the protective piece, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, because my dad is so about being like not just the provider but the protector in our family.
Exactly.
And I think, that was a huge value for him. But also, like, if I think about two other values he really instilled was like family,
Okay.
and family in so many ways, right? Like being there for my mom, being there for him, there for my brother, and like kindness and generosity.
And that's important. And it's different facets, right? As a man, you have different facets of caring for your family, for your spouse, for whoever, for friends.
Absolutely.
You have that protective I was driving to a coffee shop one day and I saw this little couple walking, they're holding hands, and he was on the inner side of the street. I'm sitting there like, I wanted to stop and say, hey, Bo, just switch sides, switch sides. And I'm not sure like why, whatever the case is. And I get it. Like, I could protect myself too. I get how the times are, and that's fine. You can, but as a man, it's like you don't have to. Like I'm here too. Like if I would like you to be like I do with my kids, do it with everyone, and that's good that your dad showed you that, not just told you, but showed you that, and that shows that dynamic there too for when you move on, as you are getting.
Absolutely. And it's funny because while I'm probably a little bit more of the feminist than he anticipated I was going to be. And sometimes, as I've grown up, we've butted heads a little bit on that. It's little things like that lesson, right? Where when I'm dating somebody new, or now even with my current partner, when he automatically did that, I was like, ooh, I like this. Okay, you're good.
You're good.
Right? Instead of sort of this other like feminist piece of me that's like, no, I don't need that. No. Instead it was like, okay, so you're a good one. Got it.
Well, it's funny, the whole feminist idea in, I guess, Melis. I don't know if what's a term for men's side. Is it we're this, we're that, we're this. But there's moments when you get surprised and you're like, oh, you fixed a sink?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's cool. All right, cool. Like, and it's not like, well, that's my job. What do you mean? And the whole thing is like, I can protect myself. I can do. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for. But it shows that your dad was not just a vocal representation of how you should be treated as a woman, but he showed that not just with you, but with your mom. And I think that's an important thing that I tell a lot of both guys and gals. Like, if you're a gal, you're in a situation that's maybe abusive or not in the right situation, and you have kids, especially girls, you're not just showing them it's okay to stay in that.
Yeah.
But you're like, if they get in a relationship like that, that my mom went through it, or my dad wasn't X, so I guess I have to follow suit.
Yeah. So much of our learning is, influenced by our social learning, right? And even when we don't, anticipate that we're going to mimic those behaviors, or we want to do better, we still end up falling into those dynamics of, learning to receive or treat others based on what we were taught by our parents.
And that's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to reverse. And so pivoting from your experience as a daughter in a childhood, the outlook of the father figure or fatherhood. And we're getting to a time, and we talked about this, in a time in our world where feminism, which to me it has its place. I'm not against them. I'm like, oh, you need to stay in the kitchen. Nothing like that. But it's getting to the point where it feels like the male identity, especially fathering, is starting to change some. So as a psychologist, and I know you're not like, I deal with dads and dads only. I know this is I love your mind, and we've had many different conversations about everything, and we just kind of go. We just like spit fire, and we're just sitting there like, wait, it's been 2 hours. You probably should get back to work, or whatever the case is. I remember one time we were at Sandbar where we first met when playing volleyball, and we were just sitting there just talking back and forth, and our whole little volleyball group was kind of like, what is happening over there?
Yes, I remember exactly what you're talking about.
And we just like sat there, just had a drink and just talked, and we talked about everything. And it was just because I think your mind, not just the education behind it, you just have such a very interesting, deep mine. That's why I
Thank you.
was so excited that you said
So
yes.
do you. That's why we sync so well.
I think so. And I was so excited when I was like, do you want to join a couple of podcasts? And of course, all the thoughts in my head that she's a woman. She doesn't, she's not a man. She's not, she will never be a father.
Well, those are my same insecurities that I shared with you before coming in. So yeah.
So with the put on your, I guess, your therapist hat,
Okay.
all that fun stuff, the importance of fatherhood in today's day, what do you see in your practices or just in general, what the outlook of a father is to the world today?
Yeah, I think we're finally giving that question more thought and serious consideration, right? I think, looking at it from a research perspective, a lot of the original research was looking at like the role of moms, right? On, psychological outcomes for kids and all these things. And I think a lot of the role of the father was largely minimized because, traditionally dads were just viewed as the provider, right? And I think we had sort of old school ideas that, much of the nurturing and all the original attachment stuff, the important stuff, right, came from the mother-child dynamic. And, in the last couple of decades, we're realizing that's not the case. The role of the father is actually a very, very huge and important presence as well. And so, it's been linked to a lot of, having a quality relationship, right, with your father, but also both parents, right? Because it's not just about who's spending enough hours with the kid. It's like the actual quality of the time spent. And we see that at least now, men's, or I should say fathers, the time that they're spending with their children is grown exponentially.
Exactly.
And also, so is that quality time, right? So, when there's that good sort of dynamic and connection, right? For fathers and daughters, right, that elicits a lot of like positive trust and self-esteem and potentially positive outlooks and like, relationships and how you find your relationships and such. And like self-confidence and things. And I also kind of see a lot of that too in my practice, right? I was just talking to a client about this today, right? Her notions of, right, and this tends to be a theme, right? People's, especially with relationships, right? When they don't have a father who's very in the picture or such, sometimes don't really have a healthy dynamic or healthy example to draw upon as far as like, what should I be expecting from a partner? What is a good role model of, love and a relationship? Or, sometimes even I think neutrally, not just with a father-daughter relationship, but when you have your kind of very kind of stoic parent or father, right, who's, all about like, just make me proud and, doesn't give really a whole lot of like positive feedback, you can eventually kind of raise a person who's constantly seeking reassurance, right? Or constantly doubting themselves as not being enough because they weren't given enough encouragement and praise. I also come across a lot of young men today who really feel like they don't know what it means to be a man growing up, especially like a lot of the 24, 27-year-olds who really are not understanding what it means to really be in their identity because like dad didn't teach me. And it's not that they have absentee fathers by any means, but sometimes really like, I guess the term I would use is like very lenient parenting, very passive parenting, where it's like, I'm just not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to let you kind of figure this out. I don't want to put any rules on you. I don't want to put any limitations on you. I'm not going to, I want to just let you kind of develop and figure that out. Well, kids need structure.
They do. And that's a good point. There's a lot of good points there. I've been taking notes as we've been going, but to touch on your last point, that whole idea of kids need structure, but they need to have structured ideals that are male and female.
Absolutely. Yes.
It can't be, and sure, dads, we're not just like the authoritarian and this, that. We have to be empathetic. We have to teach and show. And same with moms. Moms, there's times where like you have to be struff and tall and tell the kids, oh, well, this, and that, but still have that motherly feminine touch to it. And the issue, what I'm seeing is this whole idea of male, female, and I'm not talking about gender identity. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just talking about the gender role between a mother and a father is shifting. And a lot
It absolutely is. Yeah. And, I think if we look at the fact that traditionally, right, father's role was to be the provider, right, especially when that was sort of taken in a time where that was true because they were the main breadwinner of the home, right? But now you have, more typically speaking, more homes where you have two working parents. So they both may be the providers.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think with that is more pressure now for equal and fair parenting.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that can be challenging because I don't think that especially fathers, have enough models as to what that looks like, right? What it means to be a collaborative or fair parent, or even and what I'm referring to about fair is fair in responsibilities, but even a conscientious parent.
Okay.
I know you and I talked a lot about that last time. And so what it means to do things very intentionally, right? Thinking about the effect that when you're talking to your kiddo like this, how is that conversation going to go, right? When you're just barking at them and telling them what to do versus trying to understand and maybe explain it in a way that is a little bit more thoughtful and helping them build some insight, right? That's not how many of us were raised.
No, not at all. Not at all. No.
And I also think that, there's also a lot of stereotypes, right? That women have, or I would say women and mothers have the maternal instinct, right? And therefore, if fathers don't have a fatherly instinct, right, that kind of just puts them outside of the box and being able to hold that same kind of space. But, I don't actually think that either really applies. And so, there's definitely a role, I think, for a father to be a very conscientious, equal partner. I don't think that mothers necessarily have an inherent edge in the game. I think it's just been a lot of socialization history, right, of that gendered kind of conditioning.
Well, if you look back, and you're 100% right, if you look back at the history of history, fathers are the hunter-gatherers. They're the providers. They're the soldiers. They go off to war. They're out here. They might come back. They might not. The moms, and even to as recent as to the 60s, 70s, where the dads are at work, moms are at home. They're providers. They're taking kids to school, taking kids there. And if the dad was available, he will be there. And there was a 1962, and if you Google it, it's the roles. There was rules of when dads got home. That the mom had to change her outfit from the day, put a dress on, put fresh makeup on. The food had to been ready. The kids have to be quiet. He needs to sit on his chair, decompress for as long as he can. Then when he is ready, then kids have a few minutes to talk to him. So the experience relationship between most kids and their dad was very limited. And that's been it forever because like you said, the maternal instinct is well, I'm the mom, I'm this, and that's fine. And moms probably play a bigger role than we can even imagine. But what you said earlier was the fraternal or paternal instinct of this dad. We don't have that, which we weren't never really truly. We don't have a blueprint for it.
Exactly. I don't think it's been cultivized. Right. I mean, I think that it's not so much an instinct as it has been a generate for women, right? Maternal instinct has been not something we're inherently born with, right? But historically something that has just been passed on, right? Exactly. Because that's how it's been socialized or normalized. I don't think we've had a chance to really cultivate this concept or idea of paternal instinct.
Well, and I felt like we were headed that way, and we still could be.
Absolutely.
We were headed to a direction of, here is this idea of fatherhood, of fathering, of we've been in a generation of both parents are working. So, and then each house is different. Okay, I take them to swimming, but you got to pick them up, or you drop them off, I pick all these different things. But we were working together. I think we had a better understanding of how to work together as a relationship with mother and father to our kids. Then now it's starting to switch where it's okay, well, the idea of a man is bad now. It's you can't quote unquote mansplain how to do things.
Such a good point.
And really, as dads, we're not trying to mansplain anything. We're really just like, we don't know what to do 90% of the time. That's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast. Was like, we're trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
But I want to have a blueprint, at least for myself specifically, for my boys. So when they get older, they understand, okay, I don't have to just work until I fall over. I don't have to just work just to provide this, and that. I mean, I've traveled before. I was in Costa Rica. Shout out to the Costa Rican listeners there, Pura Vida. You guys are great. But I was there and I just saw the simplicity of life there. It was like we worked to work, but we didn't but we lived to live. Pura Vida, live life. And I'm watching this guy. There was a guy that was from Canada, and he had his little family and all this other stuff. And I'm just chit-chatting with this guy there. And he said the understanding of just, I'm here for my kids. It's okay. We went scuba diving, right? And my good friend Alan, thank you, Alan, for listening over there in Philadelphia. But we were out there on the and then sat there and said, oh yeah, we're fishing. We do a fishing chart. I was, oh, did you catch anything? He's like, no. I was like, well, that sucks. He's like, not really. I was on the ocean fishing.
Right.
And the idea of that, it's like, an American idea is like, we have to always catch the fish. We always have to get the bigger house, the bigger car, the bigger that. And no matter what it takes, we're going to have to like level up. When all we have to do is sit still and be in the moment, the present moment. And as dads, we're never taught that. We're taught to shut up, work hard, provide for your family, take your family photo every 3 Christmases, and then kind of go from there. And with what you said, it's very important. It kind of just crossed my mind. We don't have a blueprint for this.
Yeah.
I read this book called Hunt, Gather, Parent. Amazing book. And she's a therapist that goes around the world, her and her daughter. And they're kind of figuring out how the non-Westernized, Europeanized idea of like parenting and family, how this, like the tribal ways in the old Asiatic countries, et cetera, how they've always parent as a family group. But there still was that, in a sense, roles for fathers to be the hunter-gatherers and all this other stuff, instead of being like there and providing for these kids.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that to me, so in that case, how have you seen the effects of that? I know you've been doing this for a while. And to our next point, the effects of being a dad, being a present dad, how that benefits us as kids, to adolescents, to adults. Have you seen the benefits and then the detriments that has caused?
Yeah. Sure. No, I absolutely have. I think I've definitely witnessed the effects, the positive effects of having a good-natured or supportive, right? Like father-child dynamic, right? Whether that be with their son or daughter, right? Where, especially when they can go to dad, and dad is kind of this even keel, stereotypically, right? It's like kind of the even keel, like emotional person, because moms stereotypically tend to not be. And I think, that's always great when I hear about folks who always had that kind of father figure where they knew, okay, if I'm in a jam, at least I can go here. And I've also seen where it's like, I'm scared of both of my parents, right? And so therefore now we have a whole lot of hiding behavior and shame and guilt, and or even very like authoritative parents, right? Where it's like, dad just shamed everything that I said. And so I see that in the effect of like people who grow up not learning how to voice their concerns, right? They're very conflict avoidant and have really, really poor assertiveness skills.
I get that. Yeah, that to me is a very important thing, because you have a lot of people who are afraid to speak their mind.
Absolutely.
Male and female, because of their upbringing, because of there's a couple of videos, Instagram reels, that are pretty funny, but at the same time kind of scary and damning. There was a guy, like a race car driver, or a football player, or whatever. He put it in sport or put it in anything, and your girlfriend/wife is in the stands, and then a car crashes, or the football player fumbles the ball, or whatever the case is. But then the next clip is your dad's in the stands and they're like zooming past everyone, wins the championship, catches the Super Bowl winning catch. And it's that mindset. And sure, as dads, we want our kids to be proud, but not in this like fear mindset of like,
I got to make them proud.
I have to make them proud.
Yeah.
I have to like do things above and beyond my abilities to make them proud. I have a guest, my next guest is my buddy Alex Tennant, who's a father and he coaches his sons in sports. And so we're going to touch on that.
Sure.
And that's the whole thing about like, again, fathering, we don't know really how to really make that happen. We just think like, okay, we're supposed to be like, make our kids tough. We're supposed to toughen our kids and show our boys to be tough and strong and better than this and better than that. And like, who cares if they get second place of the other people? You have to win. If you're first, you're last. If you're not first, you're last type of thing.
You know, and that's such an interesting thing because I don't think that, well, I don't have to think about that a little bit more, but I could see ways, at least personally, where wanting to make my parents proud or wanting to do things maybe in spite of them, so maybe that's not pride, was a good motivator. But in other ways where, like, for example, the quick thing that comes to my mind is I remember when I was about to graduate college, my dad said something to the effect of, so you have about 3 months to find a job or else I'll find one for you. And I kind of already knew what sort of line of work he was going to have me do. And I was so determined to like not go in line with, you know, this city of Chicago working in some kind of political field was going to be. And so I was determined, like, I'm going to figure out something myself.
Yeah.
On the opposite end, when he would kind of put his same sort of like stipulation on my brother, I think he was more okay with like, you know, going with whatever dad gave him. And so I think there's a personality difference then, right? But I think that there is some times where, yeah, wanting to make a parent proud isn't inherently the worst thing in the world.
No.
But you're right. There's a small sort of thin line of where that becomes like the central thing when you're pushing yourself too much to a certain limit because you're desperately wanting to get their approval, or you haven't heard from dad especially that like, it's okay if you don't do this, or it's okay if you lose this game, right? Like, I'm still going to be proud. I'm still going to love you regardless.
And that's the important part right there.
Right.
And that was going to be my continuation to what you said. It's nothing's wrong for us to make our parents proud or but it's wrong when, as a dad, that's all I expect.
Yeah.
When you tell them it's okay. If my son plays soccer and becomes the greatest soccer player in high school, but he says, you know what, I'm kind of bored with soccer, I want to do something else. It's okay for me to say, okay,
Yeah.
what do you want to do? It said, no, I put so much time and effort. I did this. We try to live so vicariously through our kids because, of course, every dad, I was one injury away from making the pros, or I was this and that and whatever the case is, right? And it's always, we were always like one step away from doing something great. So then we try to implement that in our kids because really that's all we know. It's like, okay, as a dad, we're men, we're prideful. I want my son to be the number one X. And I want my son to be playing collegiate sports and professional sports or whatever the case is, because that's the first male, like I thought he's going to be a running back or quarterback or whatever, right? And instead of really kind of going to the kids and like, oh, what do you want to do? Who do you want to be? And then if that shifts, then that's okay. Like, I think as it's okay for kids, like you said, to want to make their parents proud, but it's not okay for parents or as fathers to force, you have to make me proud.
Absolutely. And there's something really powerful about a father giving that message. I don't know, maybe but just because socially we know like mom is always going to traditionally give those messages, but there's just something uniquely like extra in that when dad gives you that reassurance, right? And I think this is a really interesting time where I don't think dads realize like how unique their power and place can be, right? How valuable.
Well, and you're right. I mean, if you go, I grew up in a church, and you always hear the old aunties and grandmas, take your time, baby, take your time, when someone's
sure.
taking a little nervous or this and that. And then you look at the dads and it's like, oh my God, you need to, let's just say it, spit it out, just say what you want to say. And I've been caught with that. I've been like, come on, Cam, and just open your mouth and let it, instead of like, okay, like you said, where are you at? Let me come down to your level. Kind of, what do you need to do? Do you need to take time? You need to do this. Instead of me trying to force them anything out. And I think that's the issue with fatherhood. We try to force this like idea of who they should be and who they want to be or who they could be, instead of find out who they want to be,
who they are,
and who they are, and who they feel like they can aspire to. And I like Max. He's like, I'm not a good artist. Cam is a good artist, and I'm like, well, you're a good artist. You can't compare yourself to Cam. First of all, he's 3 years older than you. He's been doing this a little bit longer. But then that's not really an excuse. I'm like, no, you do yourself, and then you look at someone else for inspiration, but not as competition.
Sure.
And I think as parents, you're like, oh, well, then be better than him. Then do this.
And I wonder anecdotally, too, if there's a difference when fathers do that with their sons versus with their daughters, right? I wonder anecdotally, and this is sort of, again, based on anecdotal experience, whether there's a pressure to help facilitate this ideal, like, male identity, right, that you're trying to cultivate within your sons. Whereas dads are not going to do that so much with their daughters, right? Because are they in the they're not going to see themselves as the authority of like developing a woman's identity.
Well, because we don't know what we're doing when it comes to that. But B, it's true because we feel, what do we know? We know to be providers and to be the strength and to be this and to be that and to never show emotion, to never show any compromise, just to be like the stern. We'll talk about Chicago, the train hub of the United States of America. People don't know that, but all the trains come out of Chicago. But to be that train on the track, that we're going point A to point B, no matter what. And if we mess up, no one's going to know because we're just going to keep going straight.
Sure.
And so we try to implement that on our sons because that's our blueprint. That's all. That's
our blueprint, right? And if your blueprint is like, this is what it means, especially thinking about sons, right? What it means to be a man, right? Yeah. I got to teach my son this. Then maybe it's worthwhile examining and really thinking about like, what is my my ideology on what it means to be a man, right? What did I learn? Do I agree with what I learned? If I had the opportunity, do I want to shift that? Do I want to change that? Do I want my son to have a different identification with that?
Well, and I feel that the male experience doesn't need to change, it needs to evolve. We should want to protect our family. We should want to provide for our family. But at the same time, we should want to be down there and say, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And how can I be better to help you?
Right.
Because we don't know it all, but that's the issue. We've been taught and trained to know it all. Moms are the empathetic one. They're the soft one. They're the ones that come and hug and cuddle you. And dads that they just give you a high five or just say, put some dirt on it and run off back into the game type of thing. And if us men as fathers, if we could show empathy to not just our daughters, because we do to our daughters.
Yeah.
If our girls get a little cut, oh, baby girl, come here. And oh, no. And it's funny because like there's, of course, the whole like the memes and the videos of the daddy's girl. And like, there was one where this baby was crying and my brother-in-law and sister just had a baby. And I was like, oh, this is going to be Odette to Terrence. And she's crying with the mom. And then the dad comes and she just looks at him. She's probably like one, if that. And he gives her a kiss and he walks away. She starts crying again. And they're like, come, what are you doing? Come back. And he picks her up and he's so soft and cuddly with her. And she's smiling because she's so happy to be by her dad. And it's like, the whole mama's boy and daddy's girl type of thing. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like, because with men, I mean, I have 2 boys. I don't have any girls. And I always joke like, if I had a girl, I'll watch it. And I'll be like,
man, watch out for everybody.
Yeah. I'm like, this is going to be she's going to be on my side, on my hip. Because that's my blueprint. I'm thinking like, if I had a baby girl, I love my sons. I always love my sons, but this would be an extra set of like care and love for my little girl. And I want to talk to more fathers who have girls and boys, kind of that experience. But I think kind of where this whole conversation is going is the changing of the blueprint of fatherhood is very important. And it's not changing men, not saying you don't be a man and don't be on the left side of the street.
Right.
Don't go to work and provide for your family, but evolve.
Right? We don't have to change the rhetoric, but can we add some new definitions to what that means to be a good male, right?
Exactly.
In today's day and age, right? For example, and granted, this is some of my psychobabble terminology here, but this idea of even of like being more emotionally intelligent, right? Or more simply put, just being more intuitive to and self-aware, right, of your emotional experiences, of just emotions in general, how to, convey being expressive with them and allowing that, right? We have a whole lot of interesting, stereotypical beliefs around, demonstrating emotion is weakness, right? And crying is a weakness. And this goes for both men and women, right? Depending on the kind of household they grew up in. Or as you put it, right? That you fall and scrape your knee and just put a Band-Aid and put some dirt on it, right?
Exactly.
Stop crying.
Get back out.
But I think that there may be, some opportunities for fathers too to realize, like, okay, if I'm gonna, male or right, son or daughter, to really raise a very conscientious human being in today's day and age requires that not only do I got to give them skills on how to like protect themselves and be strong and be, adventurous and all these other things, but, also how to be like adequately emotional human beings, right? The mom doesn't have to just be the only one doing that.
And that's I think that's a very important thing, not just for the immediate family, but society as a whole.
Absolutely.
And as we move on with this, it's the idea of society and how much, if we work together in everything, how much things are easier. If the mother and the father in the household works together, things will flow better.
Oh, absolutely.
And when it comes to fathers as kids, we have to stop walking around like we are the guy. Like it's what we say, what we do. We walk in like, it should be, Dad's home. Yes. Okay. Hey, Dad, here's my day. Instead of, oh, Dad's home. Oh, okay. Like, let's make sure everything's clean. Let's make sure everything's right. Let's do everything to make him proud of us or not mad at us. It shouldn't be that way.
Dad shouldn't be feared.
Exactly.
Right.
And
inherently there shouldn't be this kind of good guy, bad guy, right? Where the bad guy is dad. And I think inherently a lot of times men get that role, or fathers get that role, right? They get to be the disciplinarian, right? Right. You have a lot of moms who throw around the, well, just wait till your father comes home.
And that's where I was headed next. Yeah. It's a lot of times, again, the blueprint is what it is. We know what the history of males and fathers, etc. Right. But that blueprint on the mom's side, it's like, oh, you're the one that needs to handle this. You're the one that needs to do this. But then a lot of times what happens to us men, and this happened to me personally, was you jump into that role and then they undo it. And you're like, well,
that kills me.
You're like, well, hold on a second. You want me to be this person, but then I'm too much or too less or too this. And that's
really where that fairness that I was talking about earlier really needs to come in, exactly. Right? Because it's fairness and also respect, I think, as parents, from the parents' perspective, right? Like you need to respect your partner enough to allow them to discipline. And let's say that your partner goes a little over what you would have wanted, right? That you don't correct in front of the kids, but that you allow what happened and then you pull them aside, right? Exactly. Away from the kids, and you're like, hey, I think you were a little too hard on him, right? Or I would have done this differently. Can we do this differently the next time?
Yeah, and that to me, you have to have a plan.
Yeah. Yes.
You and it's, of course, we walk into like, oh, we're supposed to love this thing, yay, and then we love it. Then they're crying, and you feed them, and they cry. Then they get older, and they turn to toddlers, and it's the terrific twos. One of those T words.
The terrible twos.
The terrible twos. Yes. But it gets to that point, and then that's where most men were like, haha, I don't know what to do. Like, I thought I did great, like rocking the baby and like taking for walks and stuff like that. But
now they're showing a personality, and now you don't know what to do.
Now you don't know what to do. And then when they do act out, because they're emotional, they run high on emotions because that's how they know how to react.
Yeah.
Or how to get a reaction from them. And so we're like, you're crying, stop crying. Or you're this, stop doing that. Instead of like really kind of understanding. And then moms who really they do have that more tenderness when it comes to okay, let's what's going on? What's the matter?
I think that's how we're socialized, right? As women, we're socialized to understand and sympathize and empathize, right? Stereotypically, though, I think as men, they're socialized to problem solve, to fix, right? And so how do you fix a screaming 2-year-old who barely has some language?
Yeah.
Right? Like that becomes out of your wheelhouse. If the main tool in your box is to like fix it, and they're just throwing a tantrum because they didn't get their favorite yogurt or some, of course, because you had to turn off TV. How do how do you fix that? And I could see how that becomes overwhelming when there's not been enough teaching on how to deal with that. And I think to your point, right? Not having a plan for, hey, when kiddo acts like this, these are the different things we could do.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to everything, when it comes to the idea of father, mother, and honestly, we know that family dynamics are always different. There's different family dynamics when it comes to maybe split households or single parenthood or whatever the case is. But when it comes to the role of fatherhood, we have to have pretty much a role set in place that says, hey, this is how we want to raise our kids. And dad, yes, we want you to be the male representative of the family. Yeah. We want you to be the provider and the protector and everything else. But at the same time, I want you to be more empathetic or emotionally mature. I want you to understand that when it comes to generational curses of any sort, it could stop with us any moment. And that just goes with easy communication. And so, I mean, wrapping everything up that we've talked about, because we could go on for hours on this. Wrapping everything up we talked about, I think the importance you said is we talk about breaking or recreating a blueprint for fatherhood moving forward. And then having those conversations with your spouse or especially with your kids.
Right.
And knowing that what we do now, as your dad shaped you to be your person and to have an understanding, to have your mindset and to I should be treated as such.
Yeah.
That as fathers, we play an important role, not just making sure our kids get to school on time, but making sure when they get older and when they have their kids and so on, that we create this blueprint of empathy, of respect, but at the same time of protection and of care.
I also really want to emphasize, there's also an important place, I think, for dads to still show up and do these things even later in life, right? Because I imagine with some of your audience, it's not going to always be new dads, right? Or dads with younger children, right? But maybe they have a 20-something-year-old child or 30-something-year-old child. And it doesn't mean that it's too late. I think that's a really big emphasis is it's not too late to still cultivate these things, to open up these conversations. It may be foreign, it may be hard, but it's not too late. And it's, I think, significantly impactful. I have a lot of people I work with who, 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds who want to have corrective experiences with their fathers, especially now in that kind of tender age where their dads are like in their late 60s or 70s and they're, worrying about how long will dad still be here, where they're eager to still have like a better relationship, even if it's much later in life.
Well, and I talked about this in previous episodes. One of the most important things as a parent is have a relationship. Is your kids wanting to hang out with you when you guys are adults? And having that relationship, because we all know as we get older, our parents get older.
Right.
And I would want to know that my kids were there for me as I am there for them. The roles kind of change. And
too, and I think that's such a hard thing for parents in general to accept, right? Because and it is. I mean, here's this precious little thing from the day one you are in charge of completely and thoroughly, right? And then to automatically accept that at like 23, you're supposed to just shut that off. Like that's a lot of years of doing that to automatically shut off this imaginary light switch, right?
Well, and you made a point earlier, and I know we talked about with Sky, that you want to be a parent that when something happens, no matter what, if they're in high school, middle school, elementary, or if they're 30, 40, 50 years old, that if something happens, they know who to call. And as dads, we cherish that. I know when my kiddos come to me and say, Dad, guess what? No matter what it is, I saw this, or I found a Pikachu card, or whatever it is. Seeing that excitement that they want to just tell me whatever's on their mind, whatever's on their heart at that moment, like no matter what, is the most like that. Dad, guess what? My like senses open up. Like I get so excited because I'm like, oh wait, you want to tell me something? Like you want to tell me your dad? Like, oh, that's great, that's awesome. And so I want that to be, Dad, guess what? I think I found the one. Dad, guess what? I got the promotion. Dad, guess what? This, and that. I want to have that for my entirety of my life. But that starts with us and our relationship with them. That's not their job to
seek you out.
It's the other way around.
It really is. And I think that that's a really important message and a really part of that dynamic. It's not, I've also heard from dads, right? And, when I'm working with, because I primarily work with adults, where like, my kid doesn't come to me. And I'm like, well, how have you fostered that?
Exactly.
And it's like, well, they just should. And I'm like,
no.
So if you've never laid down that groundwork, then why do we expect that spontaneously that they would suddenly turn to you now that you guys are closer, right? And in this like STEAM adulthood space, like it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't. And dads, if you feel like, well, shoot, I followed the wrong blueprint, I don't have that relationship with my kids, it's not too late.
It's really not.
And it might not be overnight, or it might be overnight. Just try. Just reach out to your kids.
Absolutely.
Well, this was an absolute pleasure. I'm excited to hear it back and all that fun stuff. But we always finish.
It's a privilege to be here.
No, I'm on, and I would love to have you back on.
Love to.
But as we always finish with the dad joke, and I know you're not a dad, and guys don't get mad. Why is this woman on live radio? I can't believe it. Let's hear your joke.
All right. So, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
Just one. But that light bulb really has to want to know need to change.
Okay, I get it. Here's mine. Golly, it's already end of July. Like, it's almost August.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me afraid for the calendar. This year's going by fast. It makes me afraid for the calendar because its days are numbered.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Dr. Najar, for joining us on How to Father. And thank you guys for listening. Next week, we're going to have another great guest on talking about fathering and coaching and everything else in between. Thank you worldwide, everyone that's been listening. We have over 550 downloads thus far, so we're getting close to 1,000. So I'm super stoked about that. So again, if you have any questions, we're on Instagram. HowToFatherPod is our handle, or you can email us howtofatherpod@gmail.com. Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
Just dads, don't forget how incredibly valuable you are in your kid's life, and it's never too late.
It's never too late. Natasha, Dr. Najar, thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's see you guys on the next one.